In the summer of 1988, one word came to mind when most people thought about Batman: campy. Although the comic books had been around for nearly 50 years, Batman was best remembered in popular culture for the TV series, which ran on ABC for 120 episodes between 1966 and 1968. The show's playful, catchy theme song, Adam West and Burt Ward's silly costumes and gadgets, the on screen onomatopoeias, and more bat puns than a baseball column in Mad Magazine. All of this added up to one of the kitschiest shows of all time. So in the late 80s, if you weren't someone who read comic books, Batman was synonymous with over-the-top corniness. Today, Batman is a lot of things. He's the protagonist of what's widely considered the best superhero film of all time. He's the hero of the greatest animated series based on comic books. He's the main character in an influential video game series. And of course, Batman has maintained his status as perhaps the most beloved superhero in all of comic books. The point is, in 2025, campiness and kitsch are far down the list of words associated with the Caped Crusader. And above all else, that's perhaps the biggest legacy of 1989's Batman, the complete and total reinvention of one of pop culture's most enduring and iconic figures. Welcome to Season 2 of Superhero Cinema Club, an in-depth exploration of the history of superhero films. This season, we're going to be talking about the Batman films of the 80s and 90s, Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and the animated film, Batman, The Mask of the Phantasm. I'm Mark Schiff, and joining me as always is the Bob to my Joker. It's Mike Karns.
Bob had a real nice jacket there, I thought, at one point. It was almost like a police jacket, but it had the Joker symbol right there. I thought that was sick.
We'll be getting into that, buddy. Don't you worry. But I just got to say off the top, Mike, you are my number one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a good Jack Palance impression.
Thank you. I was actually kind of trying to do more of the Joker doing Jack Palance, but, yeah, I'll take it either way. So, yeah, very, very excited to be diving into the 80s and 90s Batman movies. These are very, very significant films to me. Really, in a lot of senses, the origin story for this podcast itself. I was a lad of 10 years old when this first Batman film came out. And let me tell you, Mike, it's really no exaggeration to say that I would not be doing this podcast today if that film had not hit me in such a profound way at the tender age of 10. It was really, I became obsessed with bats in nature. I started doing like school projects on bats. We built a bat house in my backyard to try to get bats to.
Is that true?
This is all true. Yeah. I
Wow.
found a report recently I wrote on the vampire bat, one of nature's most hated and misunderstood creatures. Just an incredible example of Darwinian natural selection and evolution. Did you know the vampire bat has an actual straw-shaped tongue? Like it's a full cylinder so that it can just lap up blood, just suck it into its body directly. Yeah, they're amazing creatures. So yeah, this is a really life-altering movie for me, let's say, and I cannot wait to discuss it as well as the rest of the 80s and 90s Batman films. Mike, what's your relationship to those, given that you're just a little bit younger than I am?
Yeah, I know that you originally wanted to start this podcast with this movie. Basically, this is what was going to be our episode 1, but I think it was a good shift to go back to Superman first. But my relationship with Batman, I saw this when I was pretty young. I think it came out in 89 and I was born in 87. So I obviously wasn't the right age to see it in the theater or to really watch it at home for a while. It wasn't something that was on my parents' radar, and so therefore wasn't on my radar when I was young. It wasn't really considered one of the family movies that we would watch on like a Saturday night kind of thing. So I kind of came into it later. I think I watched it when I was around 12, maybe 13 or so. I enjoyed it. I think I was just kind of discovering Tim Burton at that point in my life. So It was definitely something that resonated with those movies that I saw in that wheelhouse.
So was this the first Batman movie that you saw then?
Yeah, it definitely was the first Batman movie that I saw.
Yeah, for those of us of a certain age, it is an absolutely iconic film. We'll be talking about some of the reasons why. Some of it has to do with the movie, a lot of it has to do with the marketing, but very excited to get into Batman and this entire season. All of these Batman films are currently available to stream on HBO Max, so we'd encourage you to watch or rewatch each one of them before listening to our podcast, as we'll be exploring each one in detail. Before we get into the movie, however, I wanted to start with this, Mike. It's a bold claim, but I think we can back it up. Is Batman the greatest superhero in film history? I think there's a strong case to be made, and I'm going to throw out a few data points for you. Now, first off, I believe that he is the most durable superhero in film history. Even if we exclude the Batman movie from 1966, he's been played by six different actors in live action and nine different actors if you include the voice performances. Including the 1989 Batman, there have been 11 theatrically released movies about Batman, plus five additional movies about villains in his rogues gallery, and the Justice League and the Flash, in which he's part of a larger ensemble. So Batman has been on the big screen more than any other superhero. I kind of looked at some of the numbers. Spider-Man is really the only one that kind of compares. He's top-lined 10 movies and appeared in three crossovers and also has his own villain spin-offs. The third one would be Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. He's made 10 film appearances, but most of those are X-Men films in which he's part of the ensemble, and two of those 10 appearances were just brief cameos. So just in terms of sheer times we've seen him on screen, Batman has been there more than any other superhero. So, any thoughts on that part?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the most relatable hero that we have, and that goes in part just because he's a normal guy. You know, it kind of seems like something that this is attainable if you wanted to. And I think there actually have been real life scenarios where people have tried to become masked vigilantes in the real world to take people down. I can think of one guy up in, I think he was in Washington, and he stopped one crime from happening and then had to reveal his identity because he was put on the stand in the court case there. And so that was kind of that beginning and the end of his own career. But it is something that is attainable and realistic, that a person with unlimited resources and who devotes themselves to this amount of training, that's something that is definitely possible and realistic. Number two is I think he's definitely the coolest superhero. He wears all black, bunch of leather. He is the world's greatest detective. He's basically a ninja. I mean, who doesn't want to be a ninja as you're growing up as a kid? He's a ladies' man. Like I said, he's rich. He's got all sorts of cool cars and cool gadgets. Like he's one of the ultimate male fantasies, I think. And the third thing that I really like about him is that he's basically the inversion of what we've seen historically in Hollywood heroes. And Hollywood heroes started with singing cowboys and cowboys on a white horse with a white hat rescuing, you know, the damsel in distress. He's the opposite of that. He only comes out at night. He wears all black. He doesn't ride a horse. He's got a badass car. And it's almost like the inversion of the historical hero archetype that we've seen for such a long time, that it takes all of these things and combine it into one character. It's just become so cool. There's a reason why he's been around for such a long time. You know, it's hard to beat this mold of a superhero that they've created.
I hadn't really considered that last part about him sort of inverting the archetype of the Hollywood hero, but I think you're spot on in calling that out. He's extremely different from the typical superhero in any comic book, much less the Hollywood icon, the types of heroes that we've seen in film history. So I think that's a really good call out. And just to add on to your other point, I think that is a big part of what makes Batman so special and unique among all superheroes, is that he does not have any powers, right? None of us will ever fly. We're not going to shoot webs. We're not going to slash someone with metal claws that come out of our skeleton. But theoretically, any one of us could become Batman. The Dark Knight explores this idea in part of its plot, but I really think that this is a core and even somewhat overlooked element of his appeal. And you said it too. It's like his secret identity as a rich business tycoon, crucially second generation, which kind of gives him an additional layer of cover as sort of an aloof Nepo baby, to use the modern parlance. This makes it all even more plausible because he would actually have the time and resources to pursue such aims. And while he's hardly alone in being a superhero who's also an orphan, his parents' murder grounds his motivations in something that's, if not exactly relatable, is completely believable. These elements of the character add up to a plausible backstory that makes him completely unique, really, in the canon of both DC and Marvel superheroes. I think that's really another big part of why he's been so enduring and popular.
I will say there's definitely other characters out there that don't have powers or magical artifacts. Iron Man comes to mind. Iron Man's basically the Marvel counterpart to Batman. He's a billionaire. He uses his money to create a lot of tech and cool gadgets and things like that. But deep at his root, he's just a guy. He doesn't have any powers or anything. I would also even
Yeah,
stretch a little bit and say characters like Green Arrow or Hawkeye, they're just really, really good at their one particular skill. Or even Black Widow or Yelena, I forget her character name, but in the Thunderbolts, they're all just normal people that are just really, really good at this one particular skill set, but we still consider them quote unquote superheroes.
yeah, that's a fair point. I actually was kind of hoping you could call out a couple examples. I think Tony Stark's a little different just because basically his tech gives him superpowers. He himself doesn't have any, but he's Iron Man when he's out there. He's never fighting people as Tony Stark. So he's armored up. Now, again, you could say the same thing about Batman, right? He's not going to go out as Bruce Wayne and just kind of low key fight some people. But I do think that, again, there's just something about Batman choosing to put his focus of his life on to becoming this figure that is very aspirational for regular people. The podcast you were kind of alluding to, well, there is a podcast that kind of covers the story you were alluding to. It's called Superhero Complex. It's excellent. It kind of talks about this guy in Seattle who actually inspired other people to sort of form a kind of a super club. And they
Hmm,
literally went out and patrolled the streets of Seattle and like stopped certain crimes. I mean, they actually did some good, but it's
I love it.
honestly kind of a dark story. And it really actually speaks to this particular individual's mental state and neuroses, frankly. It's a really, really well done podcast. I'd highly encourage people to listen to it. It's called The Superhero Complex. You can check that out after you listen to all of our episodes. You're gonna want to binge us first and then get into that. But yeah, there's something very aspirational about Batman. The last data point I would argue in terms of what makes him the most iconic and special superhero on screen, I think it's kind of unquestionable, and feel free to disagree, but he has the best rogues gallery of villains in all of comic books, and I think it's not even close. Starting with the top, it's the Joker. I think you can take it even a step further, Mike. I don't think it's just that he's the most iconic supervillain in film history. I think there's a very strong case to be made that he's the best villain in all of popular culture over the last 35 years. Since 1989, I really can only think of three other characters who might be in that conversation. Number one, Hannibal Lecter. The Silence of the Lambs film is a masterpiece, and Anthony Hopkins' performance is one of the greatest screen performances of all time in any role, frankly. They also made the Hannibal show, I think, which really, I've never watched it, but a lot of people have told me it's brilliant and one of the best shows they've seen. That being said, I think there are obviously a few bad Hannibal movies out there that came after The Silence of the Lambs. Kind of dilutes the argument there. Number two, I'm not really sure if I think it's more of a general category rather than a specific individual, but we'll go with Dracula slash vampires. Now, Dracula himself hasn't always been on screen, but there's something about vampires that is just evergreen and always compelling to us. This year, I know you and I both are massive fans of Sinners. They did such a great job of that film kind of changing vampire lore, really finding a fresh angle on that. But again, the idea with vampires is it's almost like a virus that can spread from one person to the next. And so it's Yes, you have Count Dracula sometimes, but it's not always Dracula. It's different vampires. So it's hard to kind of pin down the singular figure the way that Joker is a singular figure. The last one I would throw out there would be Pennywise from It. This is a truly iconic villain, I would say, particularly in the last 10 years. But even there, right? What is Pennywise? He's a clown. Like even there, it kind of comes back to the
Well,
Joker in some
he's
ways.
not
Well, okay,
really a
okay.
clown, but
Technically, he's not a clown, but his
he's an
form that he.
extra dimensional being that
There we go.
transcends time and space and decides to take a form of a clown. So I agree with you. I think we're kind of covering a few different aspects of film here, though. You've got the Joker, which is like a singular character portrayed by multiple people. We've got Dracula, but that he almost kind of fits into his own rogues gallery with the universal monsters of like Frankenstein and Wolfman and the Mummy. Pennywise is definitely iconic in his own way. He's only been portrayed by two different characters. So I would say if we're looking at individual characters portrayed by just an actor and a great iconic performance, what comes to my mind right away is Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. I think he's absolutely amazing in that. That's a fantastic villain. I know there's multiple like YouTube and podcast recordings you can listen to that break down. I watched one that shows that he is by definition, what you would consider to be a sociopath or a psychopath. Like he's the textbook definition of that on screen. So I think that is a great example of someone that is just like an iconic villain. I'd have to give it some thought. Maybe Thanos is in the last, 10 to 15 years is definitely someone who comes to mind as an iconic villain, especially in the context of our podcast. Yeah, I think you're on the right course here, though, that, Joker is one of the most iconic villains in the last 35 years, depending on who he's played by. If we're
Right.
talking about Heath Ledger, sure. If we're talking about Jared Leto, no.
Yeah, that's a fair point. There have been a couple duds in there for sure. But yeah, in kind of working on this list, I did think, okay, who were some of the other iconic comic book villains? And I think Thanos, you called it out. I think that's a great one. Killmonger, I think, is also an excellent villain in Marvel. The thing about the two of them, however, is that part of their appeal was the rationality of their evil, quote unquote, actions. That is something that there's no rationality, right, to Joker. Like that's kind of the point in a lot of ways, right? It's like chaotic evil, right? You
He's
you can't
an
even
agent of
understand.
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't even understand what he's doing. I think the last point I will make specific to film is just that in all of film history, there have only been 3 times where different actors won an Oscar for playing the same character. Joker is one of them because Heath Ledger won Best Supporting Actor and Joaquin Phoenix won Best Actor, both for
Oh, wow.
portraying the
Okay.
Joker. There's
Yeah.
2 others. I think you'll get one of them. The third one is a little tricky. What you got?
Yeah. Well, the first one that I have is Vito Corleone, played both by Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro. They both won Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor, respectively. I know that
That's
for,
correct.
yeah, for a fact.
That's correct. I'll give you a hint. The third one only happened in the last couple years.
Can you give me a hint of any kind?
It's for a musical and it's a woman.
Okay, I'm gonna guess Uma Thurman and Anne Hathaway for playing Fontaine in Les Mis.
It's a really solid guess. Another one would be, although not so much the musicals, Queen Elizabeth, because multiple actresses have been nominated
Oh, of
and there have
course.
been some winners. However, the correct answer is Maria from West Side Story, which
Wow.
yeah,
Not even
just
on my
happened.
radar. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it just happened a couple years ago. So there's only been 3 times that that's happened, and again, it speaks to the fact of like, okay, you're an actor and you want to win an award, bet on playing the Joker. He's won 2 of them. Go out there and go out there and get your gold, man, by playing the Joker. I mean, it really is that level of character. So pretty fascinating. So we'll let you guys debate amongst yourselves. Is Batman the best film superhero of all time? Let's get into it. Here's the tale of the Cape for Batman. Mike, this film was released on June 23rd, 1989. Basically, after the collapse of the Superman series, Warner Brothers, who, if you remember from our last season, they actually didn't produce Supergirl or Superman 4. Those were different film companies. So the last one they had done was 1983's Superman 3, which, as we all know, was not great.
Less than perfect.
Less than perfect. So they're eager to get back into the superhero game and launch a new superhero franchise. So various passes were made on screenplays throughout the 1980s, but things didn't really get rolling until 1985 when a surreal kids comedy put out by a young filmmaker piqued the interest of Warner Brothers executives. Mike, for some reason, they saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure and decided they had finally found their Batman director in Tim Burton. What's kind of interesting to me is that Tim Burton is not a comic book guy. Growing up, I feel like now whenever you see an interview with the director of a comic book or a superhero film, they're just like, "Oh, I loved comics growing up. I love this character."
Hmm.
And like Tim Burton, not the case with him. I actually think that Tim Burton is basically like goth Jesus. Like he kind of mainstreamed goth culture. Now Robert Smith from The Cure has some claim in that as well.
They look
They
alike.
they look alike, have very similar hairstyles. But yeah, I mean, I really think, goth was more of a thing for Tim Burton than like the sort of nerd side of comic books. He's talked about it openly. He really wasn't a comic book fan growing up. And I think
Yeah,
there was some hesitancy in taking on this role.
very true. When I think of Tim Burton, the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, I'm going to get a movie with a bunch of people running around in black and white striped shirts and some Danny Elfman music, and it's going to be quirky and weird. God, Jesus, not something that I have thought about before, but that's a very apt description of him.
There's no question Tim Burton is an absolute icon and a massively influential figure in goth culture. Not something I'm like a big part of. I've had plenty of fun nights at goth night, dancing around in the dark over my many years. But yeah, I've never personally really been super into goth, so I don't want to speak out of turn too much. But let's just run through his early filmography because I think it's actually kind of astonishing to look at this all in a row. So he makes his feature film debut in 1985 with Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Follows that in 1988 with Beetlejuice, 1989 Batman, 1990 Edward Scissorhands. So in 3 years consecutively, Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, 92 Batman Returns, 94 Ed Wood. Now in 93, The Nightmare Before Christmas comes out. He technically didn't direct that movie. It was adapted from a story that he did, but a lot of his creative partners were involved. He was a producer on the project. I don't know if it's for sure, but I feel like a lot of the time you'll see it's like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Like his name's actually in the title.
I
It's
don't think it is. Well,
they
yeah,
they let's just put it this way. They leaned on his name recognition
yeah, for
extremely
sure.
hard when that film came out. So we got to throw that one in there. So that's a 9-year run, Mike. I mean,
He was cooking.
each and every one of those movies is at minimum 4 stars for me. Several of them are five. I think this is maybe, and again, I can't. So Tarantino is another god level for me, but he kind of took so long, right, between all of his films. He was cooking initially, but like he kind of had a break between Jackie Brown, Coen Brothers. I like their early movies, but I don't really feel like they kind of took off until Raising Arizona, which was, I think, their third feature. I don't know. Again, I'm prone to hyperbole, as we know on this podcast. This feels like it might be the most auspicious 9-year debut in film history.
I feel like you can take a lot of these famous directors and look at their first 10 films and just be like, holy crap, these guys had a hell of a career in the freshman part of their careers. Steven Spielberg, you've got Jaws, you've got Duel, you've got
Yeah. Spielberg is
Close Encounters, Jurassic Park. It's like, holy crap, he was just on an amazing run.
Spielberg's
Um,
in there, but here's the thing. There's 1949.
yeah,
Not
the
a not a good
comedy that he
movie.
did, not a good
Not a
movie.
good film. It kind of sticks out. That's the thing with Burton. And now what's a little ironic, and I'm still a massive fan, but like it's been kind of mixed results for quite a while now, I would say, on his films. Almost leaning bad over the last 15, 20
I was
years
going to
ish.
say this is part of the trend with these great directors is that the later part of what they're doing is either not great or good at best, Spielberg's later work, not awesome. Tarantino, on the other hand, as he mentioned, I love his later films. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is one of my favorite films in the last 10, 15 years, probably. I don't know.
Yeah,
It just depends on the person, but you can kind of tell when people start selling out a little bit, and it's like, okay, they give them carte blanche to do whatever project they want to do, and then that's part of the charm of early movies and a director trying to make a name for themselves is that they have to be creative to find ways to get around the budget. When you just have unlimited budget, it takes away from that.
that's a really, really great point, Mike. I think you're spot on in that observation. So, mad props to Tim Burton, early Tim Burton. I mean, this is like if you're kind of a younger person and hasn't seen these films, I think people our age have ran through all these many, many times, but an absolute banger start to his career. So they got Tim Burton on board and now they need the script. So they actually, Burton was kind of the one that was sort of did a little treatment and was kind of overseeing the scripts. They got a guy by the name of Sam Hamm. What a fun name.
Yeah, I saw that in
Uh,
the credits.
yeah, it's an amazing name. He wrote the original screenplay for the film. However, there was a writer's strike. And so when shooting began, they actually hired a guy named Warren Scarron, who co wrote Beetlejuice, to come on board and do some rewrites while they were shooting in London. So that was kind of one of those. It's co-written by the two of them. I think
Yeah.
Sam Hamm's vision is a little bit stronger. Yeah, Warren Scarron also came in and helped out on it.
They filmed in London because I definitely recognize a lot of those Warner Brothers backlot sets. I've been on that backlot in person, and there's a couple shots I'm like, oh, I've been there. Like that's the same spot as like Back to the Future and Gremlins, that whole town square that they filmed in.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Mike, because I'm not sure if they did some pickups around that, but no, they shot actually at Pinewood Studios in London. Pinewood Studios being the same studios they shot Superman at. So
Oh,
these
wow,
movies
interesting.
were built in the same locations. In fact, Pinewood Studios is home to many, many iconic films over the years. It got its start as a location where they started James Bond, Alien, and Aliens, and Alien 3 were all shot there. I mean, if you click on Wikipedia to the list of movies that have been shot in Pinewood Studios, just A through D, and it's a full, huge page. Clockwork Orange, Cleopatra, Clash of the Titans, both Clash of the Titans, Born Ultimatum, Captain America the First Avenger. This is probably the most iconic film studios in the world, I would say. And yeah, it's just kind of a neat
More
bit
so
of,
than Warner Brothers and Universal?
well, I don't know. Again, they're literally shooting Avengers Doomsday there as we speak right now.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, in terms of a lot of the stuff that I like, it'd be up there. Now, again, like some of these shot in part there, and some of that has to do with just the size. For Batman itself, they had built 18 sound stages just for Batman, including a 51-acre backlot for the Gotham City set, one of the largest that has ever been built at this iconic studio.
That yeah, and that's incredible. I was definitely noticing that on rewatch here. I was like, there's all these little details. There's the giant iron structures that lead up to presumably like a subway system of some kind or a elevated train. It's just
Yeah,
the attention to detail here is absolutely just masterful.
yeah, it was really it was a massive production. I think Tim Burton has said that it wasn't really fun for him. He actually looks back. I think there was a quote I read that he was like, "There's parts of it I like, but overall, not great memories working on that one." And I think he
Wow.
was. I know, it's just insane, right? But it's a very different experience for those of us watching at home versus the people while they're making it. Let's get into some of that because I think some of that experience had to do with difficulties and scrutiny around casting decisions, Mike. You got to find Batman, obviously. A lot of different A-listers were considered. Mike, I'm going to give you a list of names. You got to pick one Batman in an alternative world that is not Michael Keaton. Who are you choosing? Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Charlie Sheen, Tom Selleck, Bill Murray? Question mark. Okay. It says it on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia never lies. Harrison Ford, Pierce Brosnan, Dennis Quaid. Among that list of stars of the late 80s, who are you going with?
Oh my God, I hate all of these. I think I kind of like Pierce Brosnan, but I think at this point, 1989, he's probably too young to play Batman. Like he's also not far away from doing GoldenEye, but he's very thin in that, and Batman is not a thin character. I think he brings the rich debutante kind of aspect of Bruce Wayne, and he's definitely got the hair for it, but he's not quite there for me. The other person I'm kind of leaning towards is Charlie Sheen, just because his intensity. You know, Bruce Wayne is a very intense character. There's something behind those eyes that's hiding something. And I think we've learned about Charlie Sheen that that's definitely applicable to him. So I might go Charlie Sheen if I had to pick one of these actors off the bat.
Yeah, I can see it. Like in my mind's eye, I can actually see it. And I think people kind of forget now because of his personal life. This dude was in Platoon. He was in Wall Street. He was like a very talented, serious actor in the 80s. It's not out of the realm of possibility he could do it. That being said, my pick here, Dennis Quaid. For some reason, I have this vision in my mind's eye of Dennis Quaid in the Batcave, kind of looking at stuff. And I do think, too, he can go crazy eyed when he needs to. If you watch The Substance from last year, he's absolutely hamming it up in that film, going just completely nuts on the shrimp.
Dude, his
There's just,
nose would give it away. His nose would be peeking out at the bottom of the cowl. Everyone would know right away.
you have too sharp of a nose.
That scene where Kim Basinger is like trying to look at him in the Batmobile, she would be like, "Oh, there's
Uh,
that nose. I know exactly who that is."
That's hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going with Dennis Quaid personally. So this is all hypothetical because they went with Michael Keaton. Now, this was massively controversial at the time, Mike. And I think partly for a couple reasons, right? Number one, you had Michael Keaton mostly starring in comedies in the 80s, including Beetlejuice was his like most recent role before that, but also Mr. Mom and just like a number of more comedic roles. So that's kind of what people associated with him. On top of that, you had Tim Burton, who had only done Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice. So like the film going public doesn't really know him. He's not definitely not thought of the way that we think of Tim Burton now. You take those two elements and fans are like, you guys are going to do another campy Batman TV show. We want a real serious version of this character, and instead we're going to get more of the camp from the 60s. The film is not like that entirely because we'll talk about it more. But yeah, that wasn't clearly the tone that they were going for, and I think Keaton is outstanding as Batman. Man, I don't know. We can get into all this later. I got to kick that can down the road because it's really hard to talk about the best Batmans. I think that's a very difficult discussion. But
Especially
in any
first
event,
episode in the season here out the gate.
exactly. Yeah, come back for our finale and maybe we'll get into it there. But yeah, I think he's very credible in this role. And Tim Burton, in an interview that I watched, talks about he had seen him. I don't think he cites the specific movie, but he just says that there's something about Michael Keaton's eyes that he can kind of do crazy a little bit. I think
You
in
want to get
this,
nuts?
I was about to say that's exactly the scene in this film, right? Where he gets to show that part off. And I think it's just all more in line of what Tim Burton's vision of this character is, which is basically someone who has this compulsion to become something that they're not. The version of the character that Tim Burton wants to do in this movie is not really someone who is, I have to save the city. I have to do these things because I have such a heroic personality. I feel so deeply for the average person. I think it's super telling, Mike, that when Vicky Vale kind of stalks him and finds out, oh, he's going to this place because his parents died there. Knox is like, this guy's messed up, man. He's got a couple screws. Like, it's not taking like this poor guy, his trauma. It's like, oh, that dude is beeped up in the head because of what happened to his parents. That is clearly what drives the motivation of this character in this film. It's not so much I want to be a hero. It's like I got to do something because I'm a little bit crazy and I
It's
got to find an
personal.
outlet for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Exactly. Now, as far as the Joker goes, there were a few different alternates, but they really were circling Jack Nicholson pretty much the whole time. That being said, Tim Curry, David Bowie, John Lithgow, which you can watch an interview with him on Conan talking about how he was sort of just very briefly kind of like broached. And he was like, nobody wants to see a Batman movie, comic book movies. Like he kind of dismissed it. Brad Dourif, I think is how you say his last name.
Dorif, yeah.
Dourif, yeah, he's Chucky, best known as Chucky from
No, no,
Child's Play,
no. He is Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings: Two Towers.
or Wormtongue in
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers.
Come on, don't
Very
besmirch his name.
Hey, Chucky's great. I love Chucky. Ray Liotta, Robin Williams apparently was lobbying pretty hard for the role, and James Woods. Who's your fantasy casting among that list?
Well, from what I understand, Robin Williams was given the part, quote unquote. From what I understand, he was Jack Nicholson was kind of on the fence, and then they gave it to Robin Williams, and then told Jack, "Oh, Robin's going to take it," and so he decided, "Well, actually, okay, I think I will do it." So Robin Williams later resented the fact that he was kind of used as bait to get Jack Nicholson, and they wanted to use him later as the Riddler in Batman Forever, and he was like, "No, I'm not going to do it because Warner Brothers, used me as a prop." And so he didn't do another movie with Warner Brothers until this movie, Father's Day, which is a really bad movie. But I think for these picks of Joker, I'm really interested in seeing Tim Curry as the Joker. I've got a lot of imagery in my mind of him with that huge smile, laughing. There's a really famous
Well,
GIF.
he played Pennywise in
Yeah,
the
well, of
it,
course.
so there's that connection.
No, but there's a GIF of him laughing, kind of looking around with a huge smile on his face that I think if you just painted him white with green hair and red lipstick there, it would be perfect. But oh man, I love John Lithgow so much. I think he's a national treasure. Out of this list, though, I think Tim Curry's my number one pick.
Yeah, it's very easy to imagine him in that role. I think he would have done a great job. There's also a recording of him just doing the voice for the Batman animated series. They gave him a shot to
Of
audition for
course,
that.
I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and he doesn't really do a great job. I don't think it's that bad, but it's definitely not Mark Hamill. To me, in my mind, I actually think James Woods looks the most like the actual comic book character. Like I can really
Yeah,
see him being like almost a dead ringer.
he has a
But
long face for sure. The big
exactly,
pointy chin. Yeah.
exactly. But the one again that just tickles my brain, Ray Liotta. I actually think Ray Liotta could really pull this off. I think he such a talented actor. There's so many gifs of him laughing, like in Goodfellas and other things. Like he has a great iconic laugh.
Yeah.
He plays a gangster extremely convincingly. I don't know. Like I could really see Ray Liotta in this version of Joker. I think it would be a really fun thing. Again, once AI officially takes over and we can just wish cast, then I'll make my Ray Liotta version of the Joker. But yeah, I go with Liotta here.
All right, so Charlie Sheen and Ray Liotta in Tim Burton's Batman.
I love it. Let's go. As I mentioned, Jack Nicholson was really the guy that they had their eyes on the whole time, but he had a number of concessions in order to agree to appear in the film, including limitations of his time on set. He demanded days off for Laker home games, being the
Always.
massive Lakers fan, which
Every
Jack,
movie he's a part of. Yeah.
I respect your fandom. I really do as a huge sports fan myself, but like the Lakers, I don't know. Anyway, that's a me thing. That's not a Jack thing. He also demanded top billing in the credits. Jack Nicholson very savvily agreed to take a pay cut for this film. He reduced his salary to just $6 million in exchange for a cut of the back end of both movie and associated merchandise. That was a very smart move because it is estimated to have netted him between 50 and 90 million dollars for this role. That is, even in 2025, that is an unbelievable payday. And this was 89.
Yeah. Moral of the story, if you have the opportunity to get merchandising rights, take it because that will always pay out.
Do it, especially if you're in a comic book movie. If you're in
But
Battlefield
yeah.
Earth, maybe not. That merch ain't flying off so much. The last big role here was for Vicky Vale. So Vicky Vale actually was cast Sean Young. She had a horse riding accident, Mike, and was injured and was not able to join the film. So they were scrambling, and it just so turned out that Kim Basinger was available. So that sets up a very clear Basinger or Sean Young. Who you taking?
Sean Young, very famously of Blade Runner fame. She's the one with the absurd hairstyle that Harrison Ford is in love with. I think that, eh, okay, fine. If you want to cast her, that's fine. But I mean, Kim Basinger just at this time, 1989, looks amazing. There's really no contest. Like she's so much more appealing on film that I think you have to go Kim Basinger. I recently watched Splash, and I kind of wished that Kim Basinger had replaced Daryl Hannah in that role, having watched the two movies very closely to each other. So I think Kim Basinger wins in this competition, as well as the non-existent Splash competition.
It's like the biggest slam dunk of all time. Like 80s Basinger is just unbelievable. And she's a very talented actress. She won from one of my favorite films, LA Confidential.
Which you
And
recommended, yeah, last season.
yeah, I mean, she is a phenomenal actress and does her best here. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but yeah, it's Basinger all day. To fill out the behind the scenes crew, to me, there's a couple really crucial decisions that Tim Burton made in terms of his crew. Number one at the top of that list, the man he chose to score the film, the man he's worked with throughout his entire career, the man whose career basically Tim Burton made, and probably vice versa to an extent. Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman, Mike, I think is one of the, I mean, top five for sure at this point, film composers, period.
Yeah, the John Williams to Steven Spielberg here.
Yeah. And I just think like it was shocking. He has never won an Oscar, which is amazing to me for best score. He's been nominated 4 times. John Williams, as we discussed in Superman, the most nominated person in Oscar history outside of Walt Disney himself. 4 freaking nominations in the entire iconic career of Danny Elfman. This is like one of the greatest injustices. You can see me right now. I'm visibly mad about that. How has this man only been nominated 4 times for Oscars?
Yeah, and he's one of the few that actually refuses the music template methodology that happens in the last 15 years or so. Do you know about that? So what happens now when a director is trying to find what music should go and fit into a scene, they will use music from other movies and fit it into like a sampling. And they will sit down and watch, like, for example, Mad Max Fury Road sampled music from Captain America Winter Soldier because they felt that it would best fit into the moment of the action sequences. This is apparently a common practice across of all Hollywood films, is that they will pick and choose music from other movies and tell their composers, make something like that. Make a piece of music that will best emulate this music from this other movie. What used to be the case is that a director would hire a composer onto a film and say, write me a piece of original music that captures the moment of the emotion and the intensity of this actual scene in the music. And that doesn't really happen anymore. And Danny Elfman is on record as being against this new methodology. He's very much against it. So I commend Danny Elfman immensely for his creativity, his ability to write something from scratch just based off of what a conversation with the director.
That's phenomenal. I didn't know any of that. And yeah, I mean, it speaks even more because this is, Mike, the most iconic superhero score of all time. I mean, we talked about the John Williams Superman one in the last. I think that's number two. And it's not a distant number two. That is a very, very iconic score. It was even reused again in this summer Superman. But this is the definitive superhero score. It is so definitive, in fact, that basically whenever you think of Batman in your mind's eye, the song starts playing. At least it does for me. It's like I just think of Batman and it's just dun 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 dun. It immediately comes into my mind. And it honestly might be one of the top 5 things that you even associate with the character at all. Let's just do a little sample. What's Spider-Man's theme song? His TV theme song, everyone knows, and obviously that's a banger. But
Yeah.
you can't really think of,
Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Yeah.
yeah, you can't really think of his film soundtrack in your mind. Guess what? It's also Danny Elfman that did the
Yeah, I know.
Spider-Man soundtrack. Danny Elfman is for sure the GOAT superhero composer. Michael Giacchino could be coming for that ring. His last Batman score was incredible. One of the best things about that movie, in my opinion. But I think there's no doubt about it. Danny Elfman is the GOAT when it comes to superhero scores.
And I think that Batman in general has, no matter what version you're looking at, he has the best score of any superhero. And I think he's got like three scores that are absolutely iconic. You've got na 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 Batman, like that's iconic. Everybody knows that. We've got this Danny Elfman version that we talked about. We've got the Hans Zimmer version, which is so heavy and intense and dark and awesome and kicks you right in the butt. And it's really only two notes, but it's still just amazing. There's three different versions of a Batman theme song across the board. Is just amazing all the way through.
Well, and then the Giacchino one
Which
for,
I forgot that he did that one too. That Giacchino did that once, but yeah, it was really good. So,
and he just did
um,
Fantastic Four. So yeah, he's coming. I mean, he could come for it, and I think he's a brilliant composer. I really think he's one of the best today as well. So there's a lot of great ones, but I do think it's Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman's the GOAT. Now, what's wild to me, Mike, he wasn't even nominated for this score at the Oscars. Best original score. Now, I'm not going to quibble too much. It went to The Little Mermaid by Alan Menken. I mean, again, okay, immediately that song is in my head. It's stuck in my head. Like that is an iconic score. I can't really argue with that. Born on the 4th of July and Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade, John Williams. Don't know as much about the former. The latter is one of the most iconic themes of all time. Field of Dreams was also nominated this year. Very iconic score. I think that's been used a lot. James Horner for that one. The fifth nominee, The Fabulous Baker Boys. Are you kidding me, Mike? Are you kidding me right now? I'm not crapping on that movie. I love future superheroes, cinema star. Jeff Bridges, it's got Bo Bridges, it's got future superhero cinema star Michelle Pfeiffer. It's a decent movie. No one is pulling that up on YouTube or trying to listen to the Fabulous Baker Boy score. This is an unbelievable snub for what has become the most iconic superhero score of all time.
even so, why do we need John Williams nominated twice? You just take the better of his nominees, which is clearly Last Crusade. And if you want to fill that sixth spot with another composer, give it to Danny Elfman. He absolutely deserves a nomination here. This is such an iconic piece of music that it's not only used here, it's used in Batman the Animated series. They completely revamped that music and used it for their own show. So I don't know why he's not nominated here. And you're right, four times in his career. That's a travesty. He's one of the greatest American composers of all time.
All of this is like, it just makes me absolutely insane. We got to move on to other Oscar snubs for this movie. Now, Batman did get nominated for one Oscar, which it won. It won the Oscar for Best Art Direction. That has since been renamed that category Best Production Design. So it went to Anton Furst, set decoration by Peter Young. It is absolutely deserved for this film. I mean, you alluded to it earlier. It is an unbelievable set and production design on this film. I mean, it really does feel like the city itself is a major character in this film. They talk about it when they were making it, and there's some really interesting quotes. So I'll put a link in our notes. It's really actually long and interesting 2020 feature around Batman when it was about to be released in the summer of 1989. I don't know why, Mike. Well, I actually do know why. My mom loved 2020. We would watch it every Friday night. And so I'm sure I was like sitting around the TV to watch this as a kid. They get into a lot of details around the production. It's actually a very interesting piece. But yeah, Anton Furst mentions that they wanted to make Gotham City the ugliest and bleakest metropolis imaginable. We imagine New York City what it might have become without a planning commission, a city run by crime with a riot of architectural styles, an essay in ugliness, as if hell erupted through the pavement and kept going. What a banger line from
Wow.
Anton First. Kind of a sad story, but yeah, he died just a couple years later by suicide because he was taking some medications that made people even more depressed and was going through a hard time and died by suicide in 1991, which is really tragic because that guy did a lot of amazing things in his brief career. So just an absolute marvel in set design and production design.
That was definitely the thing that stood out to me on rewatch was every single set is just dripping in architecture and in like foreshadowing. Like there's objects that are at the front of the frame that are just providing shadow content to the middle and the back of the frame. Every single set I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. So I haven't seen the other nominees from that year from 1989 that I know of, but it was just something that stood out to me on rewatch for sure. I was like, and then I looked it up that afterwards and I saw that, yeah, he got the Oscar for it. And I was like, wow, well deserved.
Yeah, the production design is incredible and definitely one of the best things about this film. Well deserved, and rest in peace to Anton First. So let's talk about should it have gotten more Oscars and nominations. Now, I'm not going to make an argument that it should have been nominated for Best Picture, which went to Driving Miss Daisy. Although that film has kind of been lost to time and is, if anything, I think viewed as a little bit patronizing and problematic even. It's been a very long time since I've seen it, so I'm not going to speak too much to that. 1989 was a kind of a strange year for film. There were not a lot of great dramas, but there was a ton of great popcorn movies. So the highest grossing film worldwide in 89 was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which we just alluded to, my personal favorite Indiana Jones movie. Back to the Future 2 came out in the summer of 1989, or actually that was in November of 89. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out the same weekend as Batman. Lethal Weapon 2, The Little Mermaid, and a movie that I was chomping at the bit to see. I literally have a vivid memory of like waiting impatiently for my mom to come home so she would take me to it. Ghostbusters 2. I saw all of those films in theaters except for one. You can probably guess which one. Now, as far as director goes, again, I'm not sure if I would give it to Tim Burton. He wasn't nominated. Oliver Stone won that year for Born on the Fourth of July. Also had Woody Allen for Crimes and Misdemeanors, Peter Weir for Dead Poet Society, future superhero cinema director Kenneth Branagh for Henry V, and Jim Sheridan for My Left Foot. I think we're okay that it wasn't among those two categories, but now we get into the interesting ones, which is I think the standout performance in this film, it's got to be Nicholson, right, over Keaton. I don't think anyone's saying that Michael Keaton should have been nominated for an Oscar. It's tough, right? Because first of all, Joker is basically the co-lead of this movie. So would you file him under supporting actor or main actor? He actually did get nominated for Best Actor and the Golden Globes
That's crazy.
rather than supporting actor. Yeah. The nominees for Best Actor that year, Daniel Day-Lewis, who was the winner for My Left Foot, Tom Cruise for Born on the Fourth of July, Robin Williams for Dead Poet Society, and Morgan Freeman for Driving Miss Daisy. That is one of the most insanely loaded Best Actor races.
Super loaded.
That is insane to me. So, like, okay, I'm not sure Jack Nicholson's going to get in on any of those, and certainly not going to be Daniel Day-Lewis. Supporting actor, however, the winner, Denzel Washington for Glory. I am never going to be like, Denzel didn't deserve an Oscar. Like, Denzel's one of the greatest actors of all time. It's fine. Denny Aiello, Do the Right Thing. Another iconic performance in what a lot of people consider to be one of the best films ever made. This was a weird one, Mike. Marlon Brando for a movie called A Dry White Season.
I haven't seen it.
I have no idea what this is. I never even heard of it.
Yeah.
It's apparently set in South Africa and deals with kind of apartheid and that stuff. I feel like I'm just learning about this movie. Martin Landau for Crimes and Misdemeanors. Ironically, he's about to win an Oscar 5 years later for Tim Burton's Ed Wood, in which he portrayed Bela Lugosi. So
Yes, which is he's amazing in that.
totally. So he doesn't have to wait long for his. Dan Aykroyd, Mike. Dan Aykroyd was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Driving Miss Daisy. I cannot believe this is a real thing.
Yeah,
Again,
get out of
I'm
here with that. That's a
I'm
bunch
not
of
saying
nonsense.
it's been so long since I've seen it. I don't know. Maybe he is absolutely brilliant and gives one of the five best
No,
supporting
he's not.
performances. It's just really hard for me to imagine that Dan Aykroyd was more deserving.
He's just himself, I promise you. Like there's no way.
It's
He's
insane to me. Insane.
yeah.
So I think the verdict where I come out is again, I'm not going to say that Nicholson should have won an Oscar over Denzel in Glory for this, but he absolutely should have been nominated in supporting actor
Over Dan
and
Aykroyd,
over
100%.
Dan Aykroyd. Come on. What are we doing there? Last couple big things on the crew. So the cinematography was Roger Pratt. He just died last December. As you mentioned, like there's so many cool angles. The overall look is just awesome. I think the cinematography on this film is really, really strong.
A lot of Dutch angles I noticed during this rewatch. He gives a lot of the kind of slightly askew views, and it felt like it was a lot compared to most Tim Burton movies. I felt like so. Yeah, he did a great job in this movie. Roger Pratt.
Props to you. Also worked on some Terry Gilliam films like Brazil and 12 Monkeys. He also was the cinematographer on Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets and Goblet of Fire. So two Harry Potter films too. Quite a career. Rest in peace, Roger Pratt. This last one's a biggie, Mike. We got to talk about this. That would be the Prince Batman soundtrack album. This was a huge, huge hit. Like the movie, was number one on the albums charts for 6 weeks in a row. It is a double platinum album, meaning it has sold 2 million copies. Fun fact, it was originally conceived as a collaboration with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson would have written ballads for the film's heroes, and then Prince would have written the funky good songs for the villains. Michael Jackson's entire career was on Epic Records, which is owned by Sony, obviously a rival film studio. So it never really came close to happening, but that was kind of the idea, at least initially.
This is
This is
such a late 80s thing to have Prince and Michael Jackson be on the Batman soundtrack.
100%. Yeah. Interestingly, too, the songs on the album are associated with different characters, right? So in the liner notes, it mentions that The Future and Scandalous are credited to Batman. Electric Chair and Trust are credited to Joker. Vicky Waiting is sung from the perspective of Bruce Wayne, while Lemon Crush is a Vicky Vale song. The two characters also share the duet Arms of Orion. And apparently, Party Man was inspired by Prince's first meeting with Jack Nicholson. When he first met him, he wasn't in character, he just met Jack, and that inspired Party Man. Now, this soundtrack was successful enough to even send the song Bat Dance to number one on the pop charts. Mike, I was like thinking about this. I'm a pretty big music guy who's also prone to hyperbole, as I will tell everyone in every episode. But this is genuinely one of the weirdest number one pop hits. I feel like, first of all, it's kind of been memory hold. It never gets played anywhere at any time anymore. It's mostly instrumental. It uses sample dialogue from the film. It incorporates the 60s Batman theme and other songs from the album into its melodies. And it has a beat switch like halfway through the song. It is a weird track. It went to number one on the pop charts. Bat Dance, the final track on the album. So the music video for Bat Dance introduces a character that Prince would call Gemini. He's half Batman, half Joker. Prince is also a Gemini in real life. It kind of comes off like Two-Face, basically. He comes off like
I
Two-Face.
can see that, they're definitely yin and yang to each other.
The Party Man video is more just like Prince and Joker, Two-Face thing. All right, my quick review on this album. Party Man, absolute jam. Trust, really good. The rest of the record is extremely mid, including Bad Dance, which I should love, but I just don't think it's all that great as a piece of music. What's your
I
take?
mean, I only listened to the 3 or 4 songs that were a part of the movie.
It's pretty short. I think there's only nine.
So there's only like 3 or 4 on the movie, and I like the ones that they picked. Party Man and Trust, whichever one runs in the credit. I don't know the name of it, but I like those songs.
Yeah, those are the two best for sure. I just for fun looked up like where most critics rank this in the best Prince album discography rankings. It was basically on almost all of them between 11 and 25. He put out roughly 40 albums. So that means this is kind of middle of the pack, and that feels about right. But Party Man, absolute jam.
Complete
Absolute jam.
banger. Yeah, it's no wonder that Joker himself is a fan of Prince and puts it on the boombox wherever he goes.
Ironically, Tim Burton was not super excited about having to incorporate those songs into the film itself at the bit of corporate synergy. He found good ways to use them, and I do think those two are used. They don't feel shoehorned in. They actually capture the vibe of the scenes that they're in. All right, so now last thing we have to talk about here, Batmania, Mike. This movie, as I mentioned, casting gets announced. People are very skeptical about Michael Keaton being able to play the role. Warner Brothers hastily puts together a short trailer that just kind of has clips. It's not even really like a narrative, the way that we see trailers that kind of tell you a little bit about what this story is going to be. It's literally just clips. Put it out the Christmas before, and people are going nuts in the theaters when they see it. Anticipation is feverish for this film. And Mike, they sold $750 million worth of merchandise the summer it was released. $750 million of merchandise sold. Really helped that there was the cool as hell logo. I still think that this is my favorite like superhero logo, just in terms of the art. I
You're
mean,
talking about with the yellow background behind.
exactly. It's the bat symbol, and it's kind of a kind of gold trim. There's like some shine on it. Now, one thing that I had never really noticed until I was reading about it, if you kind of squint your eyes and look at the inverse image, it's also a laughing mouth, where the black space and the empty space, it's like two teeth at the top and then basically four teeth at the bottom.
I've never thought about that. Wow.
Take a look at it next time. Again, it's kind of hard to not see the bat symbol in the middle, but if you're able to kind of just like look at it on its own, you can kind of see it actually is like a mouth that's like laughing. Absolutely iconic logo, great marketing, heavy push from one of the biggest film studios in the world. And Mike, it paid off big time. Batman had a budget of $48 million. It ended its worldwide run with $411 million worldwide. It was $40.49 million, the biggest opening weekend ever. Ironically, it had just beaten Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade for that record.
That's
But that was
crazy.
released on Memorial Day, which is a 3-day weekend. Over a normal weekend on June 23rd, Batman made the most money of any movie of all time in one weekend. It was also the fastest movie to cross $100 million, and it was domestically in the United States the highest grossing film of 1989 with a box office of $251 million. Mike, that's not all. Let me tell you, it was an equally huge deal when this film hit VHS at the time. I remember the day it came out, November 15th, 1989. They were like, I don't know how I would have known because I probably was too young to like actually call Target and be like, are you guys gonna have Batman tonight? But like, my mom took me to Target to get the Batman VHS the day it came out. I went home, watched it. Like, I was like saved in my allowance. I mean, it was like a really, really big deal because I think this was also the
Do you remember
beginning
how
of
much?
it. Retailed for $24.99 was the
Okay.
manufactured suggested price. Most places sold it cheaper. I'm guessing I probably paid $20 for it at Target. That would be my guess. I'm not sure. Yeah, basically VHS was kind of strange where when it first started, it basically created video stores. They were super expensive to buy. Only video stores could buy them. So you'd have to just go to the video store and now you rent it. By the late 80s, they're starting to realize, oh, we can actually sell these direct to consumers at a certain price point and really earn a lot more money. So I think Batman was one of the first, it's certainly one of the first like VHS I remember us getting. For sure, the first one I paid my own money for. It made $150 million in home video sales. So, I mean, that's over 560 million dollars basically is what Batman made. It was the highest grossing Warner Brothers film period, passing Superman. It became obviously the biggest superhero blockbuster until Spider-Man in 2002. As we mentioned, just from the theatrical box office, $411 million. And yet, according to Warner Brothers officially, it did not make money. This is due to Hollywood accounting. Hollywood accounting basically is too long of a subject to dive into. I don't know all that much about it. I don't know how they execute on this, but essentially they hire specialized accountants to run the numbers and make them funny so
To
that they
cook the
don't
books.
yeah, so that they don't have to pay people off the back end. Jack Nicholson made a pretty penny from his part, but there's a lot of other people that say it's first dollar gross. So in other words, you have a deal with the studio. As soon as this movie becomes profitable, you start getting X points from the back end, right? But if the movie amazingly never becomes profitable, you don't have to pay those people that have that in their contracts. So Hollywood accounting is a really sinister and well-known tactic that studios will use to be greedy as hell. Again, I don't know enough about it specifically to really dive into with this movie
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
overall, but yeah, it's a real thing. Hollywood accounting, check it out. It's insane that they would somehow be able to figure out a way that a movie that makes $600 million between its sales on video and the box office would somehow, according to their accountants, still lose them money. It's crazy to me.
Superhero Cinema Club will return with more on Tim Burton's Batman in Part 2. Be sure to tune in for more on this epic superhero adventure.